Hello and welcome to Hosting HR with me, Leon Morley, founder of HR Recruitment Solutions. Today we're going to be discussing hybrid working, which is very much a hot topic this summer. For those in the UK, you'll know that in 12 days' time, our government has devised a water research bill. And whether we're going to do that 5 days a week is unlikely. It's more likely most businesses and organisations are going to look at a hybrid working model. And today, this is what we're going to be discussing with our fabulous panel that are here today. And of course, this is not just a UK issue as well. This is very much a global transformation in work. So before I introduce to the panel, I just want to say that we're currently live across YouTube, LinkedIn, and also on Facebook. So if you could like, subscribe, whatever platform you're on that makes sense, that'd be fantastic, so we can get other people to know about the shows and hopefully the wonderful wisdom that our panel are going to share with us over the next hour or so. Also, questions are very much welcome from you. So those that have watched Hosting HR shows before will know that if you send a question in, I will do my very best to make sure that we can put that to the panel. So let's start with our introductions. And I'm going to go in an order that makes sense for when you read. So Paola, you're below me on screen. I don't know if that's the same for everyone, but you are on here. So would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leon. Can you hear me okay? Just making sure there's a good sound check here before I do.
Perfect. Yeah.
So yes, my background is in HR, 25 years of corporate HR experience in multinational companies. At the same time, I'm also a performing artist. And I think most recently, I could say I'm a podcaster, if that makes sense. So very interested in designing new worlds of work and helping people actually imagine what new worlds of work can look like and can be like. So very fascinating to be part of this panel conversation, even though, I think the hybrid work is perhaps a transition until we move into something a little bit more definitive in the future, in the next 5 years or so, 2-3 years. But it is a relevant topic for the here and the now. So looking forward to the conversation, to the questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Paola. Can we ensure that we get your podcast details so that I can share it for the audience after the show? Yeah, I'm not sure we did that, but it makes sense to do that.
All right. It's very easy. The world of work, the WOW. It rocks. Cool. The WOW.
Perfect. Cool. So I'm going to go in sort of reading format. So Ruth, that's not your surname, Smart Working Revolution, is it? So, yeah, please do introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, can you hear me okay, first of all, Leon?
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely, okay. So my name's Ruth Gawthorpe. I'm the CEO of an organisation called the Smart Working Revolution. We've been live since 2017, but I've been advocating smarter ways of working for 21 years. March the 25th here in the UK 2020 was like Christmas Day for us. And so we're quite hot property because we implement smart workforce solutions and smart leadership programs. And we do that in organisations across the UK, Europe, and also for some global organisations. I'm really looking forward to this session today. So thanks for inviting me, Leon. It's lovely.
No, thank you for being. Yeah, I was really excited about the prospect of getting you on the panel, knowing the good work that you've done and what you've been doing over many years, actually. So yeah, really pleased to have you with us. So finally, Cav, please do introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Leon. Thanks for having me. Hi, I'm Cav. I'm actually really an economist by training. I've had quite the eclectic career, from trading to management consultancy, and I almost fell into HR. But I guess what's relevant here is where my passion is where economics meets psychology, and why do people behave like they are? Why do teams behave as they do? And to be honest, what I'm really enjoying about this conversation is physical environment, whether it be physical or virtual, is such a key input into people's behaviors, people's performances. And that's why hybrid working and the experiment the whole world is going through, for me, is going to be so vital to business performance and to individual recognition and enjoyment.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming, Cav. And yeah, what I really wanted to do with the panel is get a real diverse sort of experiences, backgrounds, and certainly I think with the three that we've got today, we've got that diversity, yeah, looking forward to a really good discussion and hopefully lots of tips, awareness of challenges, things that you can do within your business and organization to yeah, to have a smart working revolution, shall we say, Ruth? So that's the sort of professional introductions. Those that have watched Hosting HR shows before know that we do things slightly different in some ways. So we quite often like to get to know our panel members in a slightly different way. And we're going to play a little game which we call 2 Lies and 1 Truth. Now, this is a really simple game. So each of our panelists and myself will reveal 3 facts about ourselves, of which 2 are lies and 1 is indeed a truth. And at the end of the show, stay tuned because you will find out and reveal which of our truths are the real ones. So I'm going to go in the same order. So it makes sense to do it that way this time round. So Paola, please tell us your 3 facts about yourself.
I wrote them down just in case.
Okay, good. So you didn't forget at the end.
Just in case. There's so many facts here. Fact number 1, and you will know the answer to this one. Fact number 1, I absolutely love this game.
Okay.
Fact number 2, I have a stepsister in Norway. Take notes.
Okay. I'm saying notes.
Fact number 3, I played offstage at the Jazz Montreux Festival.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. We don't know if that's real or not. I don't know why I'm saying, oh, wow.
We don't know exactly.
Could be a complete lie, couldn't it? Perfect. Thank you for that. So, Ruth, let's hear your 3 facts.
I've also written them down, so I'm looking at them now.
Okay.
So fact number 1 is I worked for Derby County Football Club.
Okay, the Rams. Okay.
Yeah, the one. Fact number 2, I once went out with James Bond's brother.
Hope that's true. Yeah, is that 006 or something?
Is that the actor or the
yeah, the character. I might know that's false.
And fact number 3, I've been married twice to cricketers, both times.
Oh.
Oh my God, I got to change my facts here. I love those.
Cav?
I mean, this question made me have an existential crisis that I've led too boring a life. What I did is I actually took a tip from Tom Huck and brought props. So I raided my daughter's bookshelves. So
wait there, Cav. Wait there. So Tom Hack is the CEO and founder of the HR Trends Institute, and he was on the show, which was Goodbye to the HR Business Partner. Which, if you're on YouTube, you can go back and watch that previous show. And really fascinating discussion. But yeah, it's really cool that you've been inspired by that. So go on. Sorry, Cav.
Great. So in honor of Tom, I have jumped on a whale.
Okay.
I have wrestled with an alligator.
Wrestled. Okay.
Or I have headbutted a shark.
Oh my Lord! You shouldn't be doing any of these things.
I'd like to say I don't condone animal cruelty at all. I have 1 cat, 2 dogs, 2 cats, 1 dog. I love animals, but I can explain the story when we discuss it.
Good, excellent. And just for the record, neither does Hosting HR. We absolutely do not condone any of those things that Cav supposedly has done. And yeah, we look forward to finding out at the end of the show what those are. Right, so let's get into the discussion part of things. So the first question actually was sent to me, and it was in relation to an article in BBC News. I'll just put it up on screen so you can see which one it is, because some of you might recognize it. But it was an article that was published in the BBC News yesterday. I think it was yesterday, where they were talking. The study was done, and the study said, or the think tank said, that they believe that people will be back in the office 5 days a week, and that will become the norm within 2 years. So that's what the article said. Now, the question that came through was from Richard Kershaw, And he asked, is hybrid working here to stay, or will we be back in the office 5 days a week within 2 years, as the article suggests? Now, for those in the audience, I'd be really keen to get your views on that. Do you think that is true, or do you think that's utter nonsense and they've absolutely missed the point? Really keen to know your thoughts on it. But of course, let's go to our expert panel and get their views on it. I'm going to mix up the order, if that's right, unless anybody particularly wants to go first on this. No, right, okay. Ruth, I'm going to come to you first.
Okay, that's fine.
What's your thoughts about the article? Do you think that is true?
Well, I think they've missed the point, yeah. I mean, we now know that work happens in brains, not offices. We don't need to go back into the office. We've built, for example, we've built a smart workforce model that contains 50 different options. So there's a combination of location and different contracts and hours. Smart work is more than that. It's about a business wisdom that encompasses a workforce model, trust, culture, technology, leadership, and skills. And each business is unique, and it requires a unique workforce model. That's why I think, sometimes we've heard these suggestions like, let's move to a 4-day week, and they're silly. They don't necessarily reflect the customer demand. And I think the main thing for us to do is to concentrate on what will meet the new reality of customer demand, because they actually pay our salaries. And the customer is not demanding that we go back into a city office to do our job. It's the dinosaurs who've got a vested interest in the city properties that I think that are suggesting that, Leon.
Interesting.
Can I add something on that, though, Ruth, if I may? Because I think it depends a lot on the industry sector that one is in. I mean, I was reading recently, for example, JP Morgan Chase, Jim Damon was basically saying, look, I want people back to the office because it's a customer-facing role. And actually, they lost clients because the clients were not able to have that face-to-face meeting, let's say, with their advisors. And I do think it's I really hope that in these new worlds of work, we move away a little bit from this, it has to be this or it has to be that. And we start really embracing a coexistence of multiple models of work, depending on what makes more sense in a certain legislation, in a certain country, in a certain industry. There's certain jobs that by definition will not be able to be hybrid. There's certain people in different phases of their lives where hybrid is good, and some others where they say, you know what, I actually miss going to a physical space, which is different from the one I'm in at the moment. So I hear you, I get it. And I'm also, I think everybody has embraced a different way of looking at how we work. I would just caution in terms of saying, whether it's old dinosaurs or not, I don't know. I do think companies need to find and strike that right balance between what makes sense for the business, what makes sense for the employees, and also what is it that ultimately makes high-performing teams. I mean, Kath, you were talking about that, right? High-performance teams is something you're interested in, the encounter of economy and psychology. Well, it's also how well do teams actually work when they are remote or not. I think these are open questions. I just wanted to add my thoughts on that too. To embrace coexistence of flexibilities of looking at ways of working, as opposed to saying, well, from now on, it's going to be 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, or no days a week at the office.
I think I actually agree a lot, Paola, there. I mean, that article was a think tank which is primarily tasked with regeneration of the city centres in the UK towns. And obviously, office staff and football is key to that. So their axe to grind, their bias in that is fairly clear. I mean, Paola, I agree to a certain extent, but Ruth has some point in my view that, I mean, Goldman Sachs, David Solomon said that working from home was an aberration, was the word he actually used. And going forward, that wouldn't be the aberration that they would embrace. But something you said there, fundamentally, I believe there are three major interests in the company. They're the owners or shareholders, there are the employees, and then there are customers. And at the moment, hybrid working, I feel, is being pitched as a battle between all three sides of that triangle, when actually the outcomes for all three sides of the triangle don't need to be a battle. They're probably more of a negotiation. And in any negotiation, you meet in the middle or meet to one side. And that means neither will it be all virtual, nor will it be all in office, because there will be some give and take. And I think for anybody to call, we're all going to be in the office or all going to be virtual, it would be tantamount to impossible. There's not enough science behind virtual teams and how they work, despite the fact it's been going on for a decade now, maybe more. We haven't done enough studies on actually understanding the dynamics of what can be achieved and what can't be achieved. I'm a little bit sort of personally fed up with seeing you can't have creativity or innovation if you're a virtual team. I've seen teams that do that. I've seen teams that struggle virtually to have creativity and innovation. Until we understand better the dynamics that happen within a group virtually, as we do person to person, we can't make the definitive call of this is right or this is wrong.
I think also technology as well, because there's a lot more you can do now that you wouldn't have been able to do before. Technology is evolving all the time. It's getting easier. I mean, even from at the start of the lockdown, certainly in the UK, everyone started using Zoom. And Zoom is still popular. And I know the share price did very, very well during that period. But I do know that now you've got, Teams is, I think, easier. And I don't know many people that now are using Zoom unless it's for a personal thing. And then they're still using things like WhatsApp or, Messenger or other kind of platforms as well. And then the whole, things like this as a platform. This was not a platform, I don't think, 3-4 years ago. It didn't exist. You couldn't do this before. Well, you might have been able to do, but not necessarily, with this ease, really. So I think technology has definitely got a part of it. So can I sort of clarify what you were saying there, Cav? So in your eyes, then, in terms of this article, the article you believe is basically a bit of propaganda for those, and that you don't believe that we will be back in the office 5 days a week, from what you just said there?
I'll caveat with I haven't read the full report, but the summary on the BBC sounded very much like propaganda to try and keep the ancillary businesses in UK town centres working and generating revenue. I can't see an environment where everyone will be back to the office 5 days a week, but I can see some industries saying that that's the only thing we found that works and we're going to do it. But back to what Ruth said, financial services was one of the slowest moving on flexible working from home, and the excuse it gave for decades was it won't work. You can't do it. Compliance won't work, and technology won't work. But we went to our houses for a year or so, and the lights stayed on, and everything carried on working. That excuse is gone. We'll see what the next excuse that comes up is.
And I think it's two sort of binary, really. People tend to look at it as either working from home or working in the office. And there's just a multitude of other options in between.
Exactly.
And that's where I say it's about looking at the unique makeup of the organisation and their customer base and thinking, what's going to work? How can we deal with those peaks and troughs in demand? And how can we do things differently? We spent decades and decades getting on the same motorways, getting on the same trains, getting on the same buses at the same time, going into the same cities. And then when we got into the office, what did we do? We emailed the person next to us. If the aliens landed, they'd say, that's ridiculous. What are you doing that for? And I think you're right, Cav. It was put into place by the people who wanted to build the railways and the suburbs. And they wanted to get these commuters coming in, putting the money into the economy. There have been some real winners and some real losers out of all this. We talked about Zoom. I said this was coming. Why on earth I didn't put my money where my mouth was and put some money into Zoom? So I've got no idea. But I look at companies like Pret and Costa and so on. And they've still not pivoted. They're still moaning about it. Now if I was the CEO of Pret or Costa, I'd be buying up fleets of ice cream vans with the little tunes going, and I'd be driving around delivering coffee and lunch to the people who are working in hubs and working remotely or working in the field or working on site. And I think we've just got to take these, what I call dinosaur mindsets, give them a bit of a kick, and think about doing something differently in this world.
There's a colleague of mine, Ruth, on this point. I think he came up with a brilliant solution. He's the HR head in Germany of a company I know pretty well, and what they decided to do was to give vouchers to their employees for these takeaway companies. So it's a good solution. Why? Because it keeps these other businesses in business. And it gives a solution to employees who perhaps may not particularly want to cook at home or may not have other options. And so, yes, it is possible to find solutions if we embrace, the differences. I think this crisis has forced a different way of thinking. The question is it going to morph back into the previous way of thinking, or is it solid enough, consolidated enough to say that the new world as we walk out of this tunnel is going to be really different the moment we go to the other side? I really think the jury's out, and maybe in the UK it's it's clearer what it's going to look like, but it is a very hot topic across countries, and there are some companies that are not that equipped as perhaps in the UK they may be when it comes to technology and stuff like that. But yeah, it was to say there are solutions also for the cafeterias or for the for the hospitality. Let's say if you have creative HR people who come up with why not buy coupons, and people were using it for the Just Eat, the Uber. As you can tell, I don't use these things, but anyway, you know better than I do. Whatever.
Yeah. Uber, Deliveroo. There's, I think Amazon are good. Yeah,
all of these. They were good investments too, by the way. Just Eats and Deliveroo.
Well, our Cornish pasty bakery down the road has put on a new shift because they're doing so well from people working.
Really? Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to say as well, Paola, thank you for no violence in that one. We've had Cav wrestling alligators and Ruth kicking dinosaurs. So it was a nice clean answer that you gave there, which was nice. I just want to go to some of the comments that we've had coming in. Obviously, we talked about this a little bit. So we've had one here from Dilip. He said, I think more companies would definitely encourage remote working, perhaps hybrid, as there is always a need for face-to-face stakeholder management. But the last few years has proved that you can be anywhere in the world to deliver results. This is not only becomes financially efficient, but also drives a better employee proposition. We've also had a comment here as well from Smita Bhatt. So you need to figure out which roles can basically work remote and which needs their presence in the office basis. Client expectations in terms of mode and industry you are in, which is probably a little bit that we talked about, the customer service side that lost their clients. Example, manufacturing factory setup might not go completely remote or hybrid, but flexibility is something which organizations can work towards making it real, which is a great comment. It's funny, actually, I was talking to Naomi Asher, the non-executive director at HR Recruitment Solutions. One of the things she said was, how do companies justify from a sort of ethical perspective that some members of the workforce can't have hybrid options and others obviously can? And I said, well, surely that's just the nature of the job. If you need to be in a physical location to do the job, then you have to be in that location. And she was just a bit unsure about whether that's right and fair, and whether there should be more done for those people to be able to work from home, and how how much businesses should try and make it more fair and equal. I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but it was just one that I hadn't really thought of at all in terms of that. And I think obviously with Smita's comment about manufacturing and factory environment, obviously there's nothing really, I assume, you can really do with those roles. They just have to go into work, right?
Well, yeah, but there can be flexible options in terms of contracts and hours. So it could be the 4-day week. It could be job share that can be picked up and put down. So it's then looking at it a bit more creatively than just being in a remote role or actually present. And of course there are lots of jobs that need to be done while people are present. A dentist, for example, until we get a dentist drone, has got to be there to take your teeth out. The hairdresser, the electrician, the plumber. they all require people to be present, but that doesn't mean that they can't have some flexible options as well. And in answer to the question about, is it fair? Is it equitable? Well, actually, choose your job. So I think to a certain extent, whether you need to be present.
Yeah, which kind of brings me on to one of my thoughts. I speak to a lot of HR leaders, right? I've spoken to a lot that are sort of planning on opening their office again and what they're doing and how they're going to do it and what policies they should have. And then some are in, I was talking to one of my friends who's, she's got a partnership organization. So there's a bunch of partners in the organization. So how do you please all of them? All have different views on what how the business should operate and run. But it's been really, really interesting in terms of seeing the differences that I come across when I'm talking to business in terms of what they're doing. But I suppose from the question I have for you guys is just really what actually is hybrid, because we're talking about it and we're going to talk about the pros and cons and we want to talk about that shortly, but I don't really know necessarily what actually hybrid working really is. So I wondered whether you might be able to provide a bit more clarity for anyone who's not really sure what anybody means by hybrid working.
So I think this is something we all need to clarify, because everybody's using terms interchangeably, and actually that's where part of the messaging gets lost. So, for instance, we've had a battle for the last 5-10 years on part-time working versus flexible working. Part-time working for me is fixed days. It's not flexible. Yes, it allows you to work a Tuesday to a Thursday, but it says you're working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Flexible working would be saying you can work 3 days a week and you choose those 3 days. You accommodate the business accommodates you, and that's truly flexible. So therein is a real distinction. For me, hybrid working is the ability, and Ruth already hinted at this, for employees to take control of when they need to be in the office, when they don't need to be in the office, and actually make judgments on what's most effective. Now, the problem with that, I think, with that equation for hybrid working is that just one single employee's version or needs don't reflect the team's needs. They don't reflect possibly their report's needs. They don't reflect the organization's needs. And that's why I keep going back to it's a negotiation. Just let's, for instance, take me as a example. If I wanted to work every day, every week from home, what would the junior employees who want to sit next to me and hear the conversations I have and learn off me think, where they're eager to go back into the office and get sat next to me? It's not just my needs, it's a balance of everyone's needs. And I think I've drifted a little bit off the definition of hybrid working there.
Yeah, but it's coming back to a point later, but it's very, very interesting in terms of what you're saying. So yeah, please go. Sorry, carry
on. But it's just, we all define it. So one of the things my organization defines hybrid working on is when all the team aren't co-located. So we define it on a team basis rather than an individual basis. And our jury is massively still out on whether that works. We've actually seen it work really well in teams like, i.e. marketing. We've seen it work really well in some investment teams and not well in others. The grouping of people, and I come back to my basis of groupings of individuals are unique, and they change constantly over time. And therefore the rules or the structure which governs them, the system which governs them, needs to adapt with it, which is so tough for businesses that were used to 5 days, Monday to Friday, in and a really clear, rigid structure. I think what we're seeing a lot of from businesses is a real discomfort with sitting with ambiguity. Yeah.
So in essence, that's a really good answer, because I suppose the first part is it's to do with what the person feels, and that's what hybrid is. But then obviously from a business perspective, I really we're going to come back on some of the challenges about hybrid working, and we're going to talk about some of the good things as well. But just in terms of, from a definition perspective, Ruth, Paola, is there anything that do you feel that Cav's definition of what hybrid working is accurate? Is that what it is? Is that what we should all be considering hybrid working to be?
Well, I would say, to be honest, you can call it Margaret if you want. It's what it does for me. It's about serving that customer, and I think we spend a little bit too much time focusing on the inner workings of the business and even the employees, because we've got to get that focus on the customer. And generally, what we do is when we're developing workforce models for our clients. We focus that on that customer, and we get the team focusing on the customer as well. Then we bring it back into the business, and out of that fall some wonderful smart working options, which are a combination of location, so hub, working in the office, working from home, working out in the field, along with those other different types of flexible working, which might be a 4-day week, it might be annualized hours, might be job share, might be something we put in place years ago, which was called gym teams, where they had 2 hours off in the middle of the day because the calls dropped off in the contact center. And it was everything is focused on that customer, and out of it comes some lovely, what we call smart working options. So I don't mind what you call it, as long as you do it.
Okay, message is loud and clear there, I suppose. So we've got some great comments as well, which I'm going to go through some of them now, and then there's a fantastic question come through as well. But we'll piece that on probably a bit later on in the show because it make a bit more sense then. So we've had Smita agreeing with you, Ruth, about flexibility. We have in flexibility, we still need some structure. That's the paradigm, which I suppose is in relation, I think, to what a few of us have been saying, but also in terms with the part-time, perhaps, and what Cav was talking about. And then, so this is why it's important to have a policy structure. So yeah, so carrying on, building on that point. So I suppose what I really want to talk about now is really what is the benefit for the employee. It seems really obvious, but what would you consider to be the key benefit for the employee in hybrid working? Paola, do you want to go with that one?
Well, I believe from an employee perspective, it gives a greater freedom in terms of how you can organize your time, how you can organize your life in a way that it can include also your working activities. I mean, it just gives you a greater freedom to act. Or at least the belief to have a greater freedom to act. You can organize your work differently, and you probably can work more effectively and efficiently too. I think there are great benefits also from a cost perspective. What we've been hearing a lot is, people have been saving a lot in this past year. Okay, first of all, we couldn't travel by definition. We couldn't even go out. But commuting costs are relevant, when it comes to the people's salaries at the end of the month. So these are the two, let's say, main, I would say, advantages from an employee perspective of, call it remote working, call it mixed, blended, hybrid working, or working in a smart way. I like that definition. I guess the only question is smart for whom, because it's that's also, is it for a customer smart? Is it for the company? Who is ultimately the customer in the middle of this equation? And I really like that question that I hope we get to from Robert at some point on the salary packages and the impact, because all of my colleagues, their biggest headache is not so much work policy, it's reward and policies. When it comes to relocating people, you have employees senior executives who have joined companies in the middle of the pandemic, and we're supposed to actually relocate from one location to the other. Well, that has opened up a whole new world when it comes to the compensation and benefits side of things and the impact that has. So I do think that's a very relevant topic as well to discuss at some point. So thank you, Robert, for raising the question.
Yeah, so those that are watching were to see that point, but it's a great question. We will definitely come to that. That was the one that I highlighted earlier that I thought was a fantastic question, something I'd not even thought about. Yeah, it's a great question, Robert. So we will come to that and get that answered for you shortly. Just on the opportunities then for the employee, Ruth, Cav, is there anything that you would add that Paola may not have mentioned?
I think I would go sort of almost level deeper, because those are real benefits to the employee. But it was at Dylan right at the beginning, the comment you shared about the employee proposition. Hybrid working has given employees autonomy. I mean, if you read Dan Pinks's Drive, once you pay somebody enough to make it equivalent, then what they want to do is autonomy, mastery, and they want a purpose for doing it. And autonomy is a really key part. But I think, particularly in high functioning industries where there's a lot of cognitive load, actually hybrid working them has given them space. So if I think about things like research, people have actually enjoyed being away from the office and actually having space to think and space to sit and space to not get disturbed. Now, could we cater for that in an office environment by creating something like a library? Yeah, possibly we could, but actually that's still quite difficult. But I think I always want to balance these arguments. There are plenty of individuals who the employee proposition includes some time in the office. The numbers on 0 days in the office and every day in the office are actually fairly low. Most people are somewhere in the middle, one to four, let's say. And I actually think catering for them, hybrid working allows them to enjoy a quality of life that they want ultimately. But the issue is again, one employee's value and marginal utility is another employee's detraction from utility. So how do you balance that out to make it even across the whole group? Ruth talked about the haves and have-nots, and it's massive. I mean, there was an article out today, quite a big study, saying the percentage of the part-time workers in the UK who are going to be made redundant once furlough ends. That if you are part-time, you are going to suffer from hybrid work far more than you are if you are full-time. And so why
is that? Sorry?
That's exactly that's a great question. For some reason, employers are favouring full-time employees. They're also favouring junior employees and using this as a method with which to reduce their cost base. The reasoning, Paola, is great. I mean, I'd love to at some point maybe discuss why companies are going that way, but it's the outcome. And so hybrid working is having its haves and have-nots, but the haves are having some really good outcomes from this that relate much more than money and time. They actually relate to effectiveness, productivity, utility, and all those sort of things.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Kevin. And I think that what I'm seeing is that traditional leaders are attracting with salary still, whereas the smart leaders are attracting on what I call lifestyle compensation. So they're going to be cleaning up. Let's hope they clean up some of those brilliant part-time workers as well. People will vote with their feet. People will leave the 9-to-5 fix, and I think that's one of the reasons that the 9-to-5 fix in office it's dead, and we've just got to face it and build something new for the future, for our future generations that's more environmentally friendly as well for my grandchildren.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with those points in terms of what you said, particularly there about from the environment perspective, and just that I put a comment on LinkedIn. I think it was this morning actually. And I said very much the same thing. I don't think that, going back to Richard Kershaw's question about whether we're back to 5 days and the article, and I said that I don't think so, because most people will not want to go with it. Most people don't want that. And as Cav mentioned, all the surveys have said that people don't really want to do 5 days in the office. Also, a lot of people don't want to do 5 days working from home either.
That's
so
right.
If organizations are going to insist that their employees are there 5 days a week, well, they're going to be a huge competitive disadvantage in terms of talent, because the best talent aren't going to want to work there. So, and the most important thing for most businesses is getting the right talent in. I think Dave Ulrich said, I think it was last month in an article I read, that he said the most important thing for businesses right now is not all of this sort of stuff, but it's still getting in the right people into your business. And that is the most business critical factor. Very conscious of time, because we're actually running quite far along. There's lots we want to get through in this show. So I'm going to flip it round now. And I want to talk about the opportunities for the employer, the organization, the business, because it's almost seen that it's a bit of a headache for businesses to try and accommodate these wishes that people now have. And, there's lots of, like we said, leaders that have said, I want to 5 days a week, just get back into the office, just do as you were doing before, and let's go back to what it was. And I think obviously a lot of business leaders are unsure, but there must be opportunities as well for the employer. So yeah, who would like to answer that question?
I mean, we can go with. I'll go first. We can go with the obvious opportunities around office space, reducing cost structure. But actually, I'd like to look at some of the things you just talked about. the opportunity to attract all types of talent, the opportunity with diversity. It pains me to see the evidence that hybrid working and the effects of the pandemic are actually affecting women more than men, because actually the change in structure, theoretically, on a theoretical basis, should aid women more than men, because on the whole, we know, unfortunately, women all generally bear the brunt of childcare responsibilities, therefore need more flexibility. But yeah, for some reason, the pandemic has gone, and then hybrid working has gone the other way. But what I'm saying is this is an opportunity for employers to correct that. It's an opportunity for them to ensure that they can get the top talent by giving them the conditions and the physical and virtual environment that they, as an individual, want.
Yeah, and I would add to that that I also think it's a real opportunity for the leaders to rethink their culture. What company culture do they actually want to nurture in an organization, and what kind of leadership style do they want to continue to nurture? So, is it a command and control? Is it one that's based on productivity? Is it one that's based on I need to manage my team, I need to know what they're doing at a certain given point in time? Is it as instead a more open, a truly inclusive culture? Because I sometimes think we use these buzzwords, and I do wonder the depth of the meaning if we really apply it. Because to me, inclusive culture means an open source type of culture in an organization, which is kind of like taboo if you talk about it from an HR perspective or from a leadership and a culture, because it's all about building exclusive cultures. Why is it so important to work for us at BBC, for example? What makes us so special? I do think the future world of work is all about, should be, or hopefully, it's more about these open source talent type of cultures, and hybrid working can really, really help going in that direction. And some companies can embrace that. It's tough to change, because I think another thing, we're still very much the bond by the heritage of the past, of the Industrial Revolution, where the human resource is an FTE. So by definition, it's tied to time. It is a full-time equivalent, or it's a part-time equivalent. It's accounted through time. And I think from a financial perspective as well, how do we start seeing the human factor differently and paying not necessarily by time or counting necessarily by time? Because until we stick to that, of course, there are organizations that want the 9 to 5, or that want to control the 8 hours a week, or that want to control the 10 hours a week. So I do think this is the golden opportunity. It's not easy, but it is the golden opportunity for employers to embrace significant change. That's my thought on it.
And I think it's a golden opportunity as well, Paola. I think for thoughtful leaders, it's a real opportunity. So 23rd of March here in the UK, leaders had to take that leap of trust their people to work remotely. Yes, it's enforced, but it's taught leaders a lesson. It's taught them. So many leaders have said to me, we had to do it to keep the business going. And actually, productivity is better than I ever imagined. And so now I know that I can trust my people. Now it's come back the other way as well, with employees saying, I'm being trusted. And so you've got that top-down leadership and that bottom-up smart worker skill in terms of building two-way trust. And that is where the magic happens, not just with your smart your smart workforce, or your hybrid workforce, or your agile workforce, but with your organisation as a whole. You're bound to have a better organisation if it's one that's based on two-way trust. So I think it's wonderful opportunity for thoughtful leaders to take advantage of that and build on it.
Thank you. So if you're watching the show and you're enjoying what we're doing, please do drop a like. Again, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you hit the bell icon, it will tell you when we're next live. And the same for if you're on LinkedIn or Facebook and watching the show. There's quite a bit I'd really like to go through, because we've had quite a few questions come through. I've had some pre-sent and then some that have come through live. I'm going to come to Robert's question. We did highlight this earlier. And So Robert asks, what will be the effect you believe on salary packages if employees, executives can remain located in their home country instead of relocating to a headquarter office? I can tell a little bit on this stuff because I've been doing a little bit of this with some of my clients.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things has become quite clear in terms of that I've noticed, not necessarily right at the top sort of executive level, but certainly when I've spoke to businesses and they've talked about their salaries and what they're looking at the moment, actually it's much more open than it perhaps was before. So there's a lot of people that I've spoken to that if they're working from home, their expectation is not the same as it was when they were commuting, because of course there isn't the costs involved. And the benefit for them in terms of potential flexibility is significant. So I've had a lot of people saying, look, I'm not interested actually in the package. If, I don't need, 5,000 more, 10,000 more or whatever for the next role. What I really want is the right organization, the right opportunity that's going to challenge and stretch me. And I don't care if it's going actually backwards in package, as long as the flexibility is there. If they've got young families or for whatever reason, they might need that flexibility as caring for an elderly parent, or they just want that flexibility of hobbies and things that they have. And so what I've noticed is that, salaries generally are a little bit more depressed. There's a bit less money rolling around in a lot of businesses because a lot of them have been affected. And I think also you internationalize again the jobs side of things. So now, whereas you would have to, for example, Switzerland is an incredibly brilliant place for talent, but it's also an expensive place to hire somebody. And if you can hire somebody that's equally as good, but isn't necessarily costing as much money, and they don't necessarily need to be based in Geneva or Zurich or something like that, then there's definitely opportunities and businesses that are looking at that in a slightly different way that they probably would have done before. So I've certainly seen a big change in the international market from what I've seen there, but also domestically at sort of mid-senior level, a significant change in terms of salaries. So anyway, I'm not a guest expert on this show, but that's just what I'm seeing, Robert. I don't know if that helps, but that's what I'm saying. I don't know if anyone on the panel has anything to add to that point, or anything that they've noticed that maybe I've not mentioned.
Ruth, you go, Ruth.
No, you go, Gavin. You go.
I'm wanting to be the technical HR person in the room. One of the issues is payrolls in countries, and until the global taxation system catches up with the world we're in, and we know that tax moves very slowly, that won't be quite as simple as it is. You can't just hire one person in, for instance, I think Switzerland, set up a whole new benefit system, a whole new payroll. It isn't cost effective for companies. So there are still barriers to being truly global. One of the things that Robert's question sort of hints at is, let's say, geographic differences within a single country. Let's say you've got a payroll and everything like that. I mean, my philosophy, and maybe this isn't a great answer, is pay people what they're worth and what their value is to your company. Don't try to get away with paying as little as you can. Don't pay them based on where they locate and where they are, because that's their choice, not yours. Pay them what they're worth. And that sort of takes away that question. Because, I mean, I get why you're saying sort of, i.e. London. Like, for instance, my partner works for the NHS. There is a London weighting that you get extra if you live in London, for obvious reasons around living costs, around commuting costs, etc. But actually, with the exception of industries like that where you cannot be virtual, as Ruth said, your dentist can't be virtual, your surgeon can't be virtual, although your doctor can in some ways. That's increasing massively. In industries where that can be the case, you have to set a bar of, this is what this role is worth to the organization. Now, where does that leave me? And be much wider than that. You used to say, well, that only leaves me with a 20-mile radius of our head office. Now that leaves you with every country on the earth, bar the ones where salaries are much higher. And actually, there may be some wage inflation and some wage suppression as a result of that.
Yeah, and I think, moving on from that actually helps to level out the playing field in terms of some of the more remote places, either in the UK, in Europe, and so on. It becomes more of a level playing field, and it also plays to people who have disabilities, or those who, as you say, are carers or parents. It's a lot more inclusive. I do agree with you, Cam. I think you've got to pay what the person is worth. But a lot of people will happily take a bit of a cut in salary if they can get that flexibility that they want, and actually they've become used to and have seen that it works both for them and the organisations they work for as well. So I just think we've got to we as leaders have got to think flexibly too.
I'm just looking at sort of time and where we're going through. So we might run over a little bit longer if you guys are okay, because there's some really key bits that I want to get some questions from the audience, some preset questions. And also I might not necessarily go around the panel necessarily as such, just so we can try and get some of this stuff in. I wanted to ask really about the problems and challenges of hybrid working. There's been a few articles that I've read that we've talked about some of them a little bit in terms of part-timers. I know there's been an article that was out very recently with regards to gender disparity and the greater, potential impact on women. Obviously, we talked about some of the challenges in I think it was already mentioned as well in terms of culture and how do you set a culture and sort of put that through. So yeah, I suppose sort of challenges and problems really, because then hopefully we can come up with some tips and advice about how to avoid some of those challenges and issues that you might occur as an organisation. So challenges and problems of hybrid working. Paola, do you want to go first on this?
I think besides, a bit the flip side of everything we've been saying, what is an opportunity also can be seen as a challenge. And I'm really seeing it also from my experience. So I'm really looking at it from a multinational perspective. So global, let's say, companies operating across geographies with significant, let's say, very profitable. So at least the companies I know, I've never heard of, let's say, offering salaries below, what people are worth. I mean, that to me is unthinkable, quite frankly. So looking at it from that perspective, I think that one of the challenges is probably going to be a challenge really to see how to solve is if you're ambitious, if you want to make a career in an organization, and if you want to grow up, go up the ladder. There is an important concept of the mothership to some extent. So when you are being developed, you are sent to expatriate assignments, you realize how important it is to anyway stay connected to the base, to anyway stay connected to where the decision makers are, because there's a saying, right? Away from sight, away from the heart, something like that. I think that's one of the sayings. And I think one of the challenges is how do you, in a hybrid type of working, in a remote type of working, where people see you less, where you may not be exposed to certain critical touch points that are not necessarily the meetings, they're everything that happens around the meetings. Also, when it comes to, so for example, for your own visibility, your own exposure, how do you show your talent? How do you show your leadership skills from a human perspective, not only from a results perspective? And on the flip side, from a company perspective, is how do you identify your top talents when you hardly ever see them, let's say, in action in non-routine type of situations, in let's say, objective-driven type of situations, which are many in business. So the unexpected, how do you see them in crisis situations? So I do think this is where that's striking that right balance. And we were saying it right from the beginning, this is a negotiation. This is not, the tips. The tips is got to stay close to the ground. If you're a leader, you got to make sure you have conversations with your people, with your employees, find that sweet spot, because the leaders I've talked to, the CHROs I've talked to, there is no one solution fits all. But there was a comment here before, you do need to provide structure. That's what an organization is about. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called an organization. So you need to have structure, because that's also equals equity. If not, some employees are going to say, well, wait a second, why did Cav get that treatment? And I have a different one. Again, I'm talking about like global companies where you really need to watch equity on how the work is being managed and organized. So a long-winded answer, but I would really wrap it down to, how do you identify talent and how do you make sure you stay linked to key decision makers if you do aspire to grow in that business?
I would draw on that. So one of the deepest anthropological needs of human beings is the sense of belonging, is the sense that we want to belong. We want to belong to a community, to a grouping, and it's deep-seated. It's hardwired into us. And one of the components of that Ruth mentioned before was trust. But another mention of that is connection, and I'm talking about sort of psychological connection. And one of a very smart lecturer that I had once said, one of the most addictive, or the most addictive thing to one human being is another human being. We're hardwired to want to be around each other. And actually, there's been a lot of research in the OD space on what's happened over the pandemic. Many organizations have been drawing down what they've defined as social capital. So relying on old relationships that have been formed through proximity, through social interaction. And I think that hasn't been replicated, no matter how hard we've tried to do things like murder mysteries and cocktail making classes over virtual. That hasn't been replicated yet virtually. And organizations are struggling with this because the connection's lost. And that connection breeds belonging, it breeds loyalty, it breeds commitment. And that is being drawn down over it. And until we figure out how to replicate that, companies are going to need to solve for physical proximity.
It's interesting. It's slightly linked to this, actually. Miriam has just messaged to say, how can we recreate the serendipity and creativity of the random coffee discussion with peers? Which obviously building, I think, a little bit similar to what you were saying, Cav. Any ideas? So what I miss the most, and why I will go back to the office. So yeah, I think that's very much echoes what you were just saying there. Is there any obvious glaring? We talked a bit about sort of the part-time side, the almost the sort of like a well-being aspect of wanting to belong and being around other humans, and sort of yearn to naturally do that. We talked about problems from a cultural perspective. And then we talked, Paola, you talked about sort of, I suppose almost I saw that, I read it a little bit from what you were saying about remote workers or people that aren't present necessarily as much, and whether they will be at a significant disadvantage. How do organizations keep them connected and see their performance and things like that?
Sorry, not performance, potential. Because performance, I think, companies are really good at measuring that. You either have the results or you don't. But it is that extra something that individuals have to say, you know what, that person could do much more because I've seen them in different situations that they can do. So it's not performance as much as potential. I think that's something it's an open question. How do you measure that? How do you identify potential in an organization that is hybrid and remote?
Well, interestingly, that's perfect segue into the next question that we had. So Claire Spires sent a question actually before the show. I don't know if she's watching now. I think she said she would struggle to watch live, but really wants to watch it afterwards, which of course you can do on LinkedIn and YouTube. They will be there. The recording will be there. Her question is very similar to that. So she asks, how can businesses monitor whether their hybrid working model is going to be working for them?
So for me, I'd answer that question in the same way as they measured how their workforce model was working for them post pandemic. And I think the answer to that is not many of them really measure it, to be perfectly honest. And so actually, there's work to be done there, I think, from a business perspective. I would look at the outcomes. I'd look at the outcomes that are delivered in the business. I'd look at the customer service levels. And one thing that I have noticed over during the pandemic is that customer service to a certain extent has dropped off in some organisations, badly so. And I think there's work to do to build that up. So I'd probably look at that end to begin with, to see whether my hybrid, smart, agile, Margaret workforce was working for me.
Okay. If we're literally come to our hour, I think we've had some great comments come through on the various actually platforms here. Some good questions. I hope that everyone's enjoyed the discussion we've had. I do feel this is probably something we could do for a couple of hours, but I know particularly for Paola, it's 9 o'clock there and getting late, and I'm surprised it's not really dark actually where you are. It looks
Not yet,
nice.
exactly.
The lights on Paola.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. I hope everyone has enjoyed the show. Let's do our finish off with our, as we always really do, with our reveals for our 2 lies and 1 truth. So we'll go in this sort of same order that we started with. So, I never told you mine, did I?
No,
I always forget. I always forget about me.
Do you just do new ones every time you do the show, or are they always the same?
I do. Yeah, it's because I forget sometimes. I forgot to do them last time as well. I'll do them very quickly, but let's go around in sort of the order that we started. So, Paola, remind us of your 3 facts about you.
Well, first of all, I'll let you guess because you should know the answer.
I know the answer.
At least to the first one, you know. Yeah. And I think I played this game wrong. Anyway, so my facts were I love to play this game. Right? I have a stepsister in Norway. And I played off stage at the Jazz Montreux Festival. So
really
do I need to reveal, or are you guys going to guess?
No, let's Ruth and Cav can give us their views.
I think it's the final one.
Yeah, I'm going for jazz. I'm going to try and get jazz.
Yeah.
In terms of the truth?
Yes.
Shall I reveal, Paola, or do you want to do it? Because I think I know what it is.
Let's roll the drum. Go ahead, Leon.
Paola doesn't like this game. When I told her that it was part of what we did, it was part of the show. So people, we've had feedback, people enjoy it. And Paola was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah, we're going to do it." So anyway, thank you for partaking in it. I hope it wasn't so bad. So that was the truth. So Paola doesn't enjoy these like 2 lies, 1 truth type games. So we'll go next to Ruth.
No, that was the lie. I said I love this game.
Yeah,
the lie.
Yeah, she loves.
So Cav and Ruth, you're right. The truth is the Jazz Festival.
Oh, really?
Ah.
All right.
No,
I thought you said.
I have to explain your own game. It's like
No, you said that. Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway,
I said I love this game, which obviously is a lie. Stepsister, I ain't got one unless I don't know about it. But the truth is, congrats, Ruth and Cav. We just met in this live, but hey, you guys rock.
Well done, Ruth and Cav. And I'm slightly embarrassed about that, but that's really awesome, Paola. I know that you're very creative and very talented in lots of not just as a fantastic HR person, but yeah. So Ruth, you were up next. So you're we'll go on with that. So remind us of your 3 facts.
My 3 facts were: I worked for Derby County Football Club. I once went out with James Bond's brother, and I've been married twice to cricketers each time.
Cav, Paola, what do you think?
I want it to be the James Bond one, but I'm going to go for cricketers.
Yeah,
Paola?
I go for the last one too.
All right, I was going to go for cricketers, but just to keep it interesting, I'll go for used to work for Derby County Football Club.
Okay, none of you thought that I went out with James Bond's brother then.
No.
Because you think I'm too old. But I didn't work for Derby County Football Club. I worked for Aston Villa Football Club.
Okay.
I have been married twice to cricketers, but actually I've been married 3 times. So twice to cricketers and once to a footballer. And the truth is, I once went out with James Bond's brother, and it was Timothy Dalton. So it was
Really? Wow.
Timothy Dalton's brother.
Wow.
Oh my God, is he like Timothy Dalton?
I thought it was a bit of a wet weekend, to be honest. So it didn't last very long.
Wet weekend.
Right, not for you. Wet weekend. What does that mean, Ruth? Explain to Paola. She's not a native Brit.
It's grim and dull.
Can't go out. It's a bit boring.
Yeah.
Oh my
We
god.
have a lot of wet weekends in the UK, so we know exactly what all that means here. So that's wow. You both of you have completely surprised me on this. So Cav and your abusing of animals.
I don't say I'm abusing. I'll caveat that again. Mine were I have jumped on a whale, I have wrestled with an alligator, or I have headbutted a shark.
Now I'm going to go with the shark.
Headbutted the shark, Paola.
So alligator, I just don't see you doing that, quite frankly, with a hand wrestling an alligator. That's a tough one. A whale, gosh, I mean, these things are huge, right? So I go by elimination number 3 as well.
I'm going to go for whale.
You're going to go for a whale. Was it a baby whale? Was it a big whale?
You'll buy a book.
There's the shark.
It was a very small shark, and it was an accident. I swam out, it swam up. We swam directly head on into each other.
Oh my
It was
word.
only about a 3-foot shark, so it wasn't very big.
Wow.
But I do want to wrestle with an alligator. I do want to do alligator wrestling, but never had the opportunity.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You probably win as well, I'm sure, Kat. We'll wrap up with mine because I did actually prepare some and I completely forgot about them. So my 3 facts are: Paola and I might be responsible for the closure of a popular restaurant in Zurich. Secondly, I am fluent in Spanish. And third and finally, my favorite music genre is reggae.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay.
Ruth, Cav, I'm not going to let you answer this one, Paola.
I think it's the first one.
I think it's the Zurich one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Paola's fault, really. I think we've cancelled about 3 times. We were supposed to 2 or 3 times, I can't remember. And then we finally got together to go, and it was shut when we arrived.
Went to McDonald's.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, we didn't go there. We just went to a bar in the end or something. But
and by the way, they never recovered ever since, Leon. They're still restructuring. It's called the Moods. If anybody's interested,
Oh,
to come to
really?
Zurich, see the Moods. Great place, but it's closed.
Yeah. We're very excited about it. But yeah, so there we go. So I know that's not great content of the rest in terms of intelligent highbrow stuff, but hopefully it ends the show on a really nice and chilled sort of way. It is the evening, of course, and it's certainly very late over in Europe. In terms of next shows, we will be having one in 5 weeks' time, and then always at the second Wednesday week of every month, we will have our shows. As of yet, I'm yet to confirm my next bunch of shows, so I am very open, and I wanted to be open on purpose for people to tell us what they would like us to discuss, and then I will do my best to get that on and get a panel together of experts in that particular field. Of course, I have ideas, of course, I have discussions in my network, but I'd be very keen to hear anybody who would like to let me know of any shows. Either pop it in the comments or drop me a note on LinkedIn or even the YouTube comments, and I'll do my best to look to get those on. But otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in there at home or wherever you are. And thank you 3 for joining me this evening to discuss hybrid working.